now we're into rebuttal, and I'm going to reserve, let's say, the last 2 minutes, so I'll take 4 minutes. There are a few points I want to rebut. So the first one, I think I can speak loud enough without this thing. Okay. The couple points I want to rebut, but let me first start with the age appropriateness of the students. This case really dealt with kids who were in elementary school, not kids who were in high school. And one could make an argument that I would certainly be willing to listen to, that younger kids shouldn't be exposed to material that we would expose older kids to. That to me seems to make a lot of sense. But I'm a lawyer. I'm a law professor. I have absolutely no knowledge about child psychology and child development. If that is going to be a way that we want to talk about this, it's better for the experts who know about child psychology to address it than the legal system. And I think that's exactly what you get when you let these kinds of decisions be made by school officials as opposed to being made by courts. The second is on the extensiveness of this right. Sure, if this is just a minor right, if this is just a few people taking an opt-out, it's not that significant. Why worry about it? Let me go home. But the Supreme Court delivers this opinion at the very end of June, when they deliver all of their major opinions. And the reason this is a major opinion, and we don't know how cabined this is going to be, because we've got to send it out there and see what happens through litigation. And you heard opposing counsel talk about thousands of people who were prepared to object when this was debated by the school board, suggesting that we may be talking about a significant, no, that's not the right word, gargantuan number of potential legal claims coming to our court systems. And imagine what that means for our school systems. They're going to be overwhelmed trying to litigate these kind of claims. They'll certainly excise as much material that seems to be controversial in order to reduce their legal fees and the disruptive aspect of education in general. But I think I'm going to now go into what seems to me to be an underlying concept here that's probably the more fundamental critical point. Montgomery County spent $3.6 billion to educate its kids at $23,000 per child. That money comes from the taxpayers. So there's a fundamental difference here. Who should be in charge of public education? Should it be the parents or should it be the taxpayers? Now, as a taxpayer, I pay money for public education because it's a public good. It is something that will help all of us in society. I am not paying money to public education for the single purpose of raising other people's children. That's their responsibility, that's their obligation. So when they cross over into public school, they're crossing over into an institution that's for the public's good. So that the concept of inclusivity, I think it's very clear. These religious parents who objected to this material would not have defined the LGBTQ community as a part of their inclusive community. We have to define everyone as part of our inclusive community, and our public schools need to do the same. I'll stop there. That's my 4 minutes.
All right. I want to zoom in and then zoom back out. First, to zoom in because, as the majority recognized in Mahmoud, these cases of this sort are fact-intensive. They're fact-dependent. Now, the proposition before you tonight isn't dependent on a particular set of facts. It is broadly stated. But I think some facts help flavor that. So first, let me zoom in. I just want to give you 2 examples. These are lifted directly from the Mahmoud majority opinion, in which young children were affirmatively taught that gender is subjective and changeable and unrelated to biological sex. Now, You may believe that, you may not believe that, you may have strong feelings about it, or you may be agnostic about it. But the fact is there are people, including the plaintiff in this case, Muslims, Orthodox Christians, Catholics, and others, who do have strong feelings about it. For example, not in one of the texts, but in the discussion guide, the teachers were mandated to present the material to the students. They were taught to tell students, at any point in our lives, and I'm quoting, we can choose to identify with one gender, multiple genders, or neither gender. In another instance, the teachers were instructed to tell the children, when we're born, people make a guess about our gender and label us boy or girl based on our body parts. Sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're wrong. Now again, you might agree with that, you might disagree with it, you might not care. The point in this case was there were parents who did care. Taxpayers too, and parents, who did care, and it was contrary to the beliefs they wanted to instill in their children. That's the zooming in, because I think it matters. Now let's zoom back out. 2 points when we zoom out. First, we've heard, I think correctly, that this case, like any blockbuster case, if you want to call it that, leaves certain elements undecided. There's going to be decades of litigation to sort it out. Y'all, that's true in every big case. When District of Columbia versus Heller, the first Second Amendment case to be decided in centuries, was decided, it's when I was in law school, so it's been a while, 2008 maybe, I don't know the year of it exactly, but around that. The Supreme Court, for the first time, recognized a constitutional right incorporated for people to bear arms. It's been decades of litigation to sort that one out. That's true of every case, and that's not necessarily a reason not to recognize a right, to memorialize a right, or to reach a ruling. It's no mark against Mahmoud that it hasn't answered every question that could be asked. The second piece I want to talk about as we zoom out, again, is to put Mahmoud, and frankly, to put the proposition that we're here to talk about tonight in a broader, recent constitutional litigation context. And that is, over the past decade to 15 years, as our country, as our society, as our courts, and as our justices have tried to chart a path between inclusivity and accommodation for LGBTQ people and inclusivity and accommodation for people of traditional religious faiths. 4 cases I'll bring to your attention. Obergefell, the majority found a constitutional right nationwide to same-sex marriage. Bostock, the majority found that Title VII, Federal Civil Rights Employment Law, protections extend to transgender people. But the same court, a footnote, a few of the justices had changed, but it's in the same relative period of time, and many of the justices were the same. Let's not get hung up on the little detail. Effectively, the same court also concluded in Fulton versus City of Philadelphia that a Roman Catholic foster agency, licensed by the state, contracted by the state, funded by the state, could choose to work only with co-religionists, and in the facts of that case, not to affirm LGBTQ couples for foster care work. They had other options that could do that. And most recently in Mahmoud v. Taylor, which we've already talked about. What's the point I'm making? The Supreme Court, and again, culturally, nationally, all of us are trying collectively to chart a path where we can have both inclusivity and respect and tolerance for religious people. Can we have both of those things? Yes, we can. But will there be times when they come into conflict? There will. We've talked about a few of them. And when that happens, what should we do? That's the proposition before you. I'm not going to rehash everything I said earlier, but I'll try to land the plane in the minute and 15 seconds I've got left. When you've got 2 things that you're trying to have at the same time and they come into conflict, in our constitutional system, in Mahmoud, in the public school context, which one must yield? The enumerated right, the fundamental right to protect the free exercise and the upbringing and education of your children will prevail. Again, keep in mind, not against anyone else. The books are still being read. The curriculum is still being taught. Inclusivity is still being practiced. It's not a zero-sum game. Respecting and accommodating religious folk doesn't take away from the ability of the school district and the other non-objectors to do as they were doing before. But the religious objectors should be excused. In conclusion, let me read one more, once again, from George Washington's letter to the Jewish congregation in Newport, Rhode Island. He said to them, "May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants. While everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid." For those reasons, I would again urge and encourage you to vote no on the proposition.
Let me conclude this way. Our society is a society dedicated to individual self-determination. The individual has the right for he or she to decide for themselves what it is they want to do in life. We're dealing with children. We're not dealing with adults. Children are not capable of deciding for themselves. They have to go through a maturation process before they become full-fledged adults. This is exactly why the Supreme Court, up until Mahmoud, had taken a very different tack with respect to the rights of kids in public schools. Because the goal of public schools was to help train them up so that they would become these individual self-determining people. Part of the value set, and once again, let me go back to that. The United States Supreme Court, in numerous opinions, has said the fundamental purpose of of public education is the inculcation of fundamental values necessary for the maintenance of our society. We have everybody in public schools. We have our murderers, our future rapists, our future armed robbers in there. We have our future people who will assault LGBTQ individuals in the public schools. We pay a tremendous amount of money for public school education. The control of public school education is not to rest with the parents. The parents have 5/6 of the waking time of a child to influence the child any way that they want. We, the public, only have this 1/6 in public schools. What Mahmoud is doing is taking away even that 1/6 for a section of our population.